Tonight on Talking Points, an offensive video from a Syracuse University fraternity ignites controversy on campus.
Former FBI Director James Comey is on a media tour to promote his new book.
And CIA Director Mike Pompeo meets with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. This is Talking Points.
When I got the email, but I really wasn't. Unfortunately, it's something that we've all kind of come to expect at this point, as sad as that is to say.
That was Liam McMonigal, a sophomore at Syracuse University and one of the leaders of a protest last night that went from Chancellor Kent Severud's house to Hendricks Chapel to demand action from the university. Good evening, I'm Mike Riccardi.
Students demanded the release of a video that depicted new pledges in the Theta Tau professional fraternity using racist language as part of an initiation.
On Wednesday morning, Chancellor Severud emailed all students, faculty, and staff, informing everyone that videos containing racist, anti-Semitic, sexist, homophobic, and hostile behavior surfaced over the past week. Severud also mentioned that the Department of Public Safety was conducting a formal investigation and that Theta Tau was suspended indefinitely. Almost immediately, students began requesting the videos released from Syracuse University. The hashtag #ReleaseTheVideoSU appeared on Twitter, along with alleged dialogue from the video.
Many students, such as Liam, protested outside Chancellor Severud's house before walking to Hendricks Chapel to begin a dialogue on treatment of minorities at the university. The Daily Orange released the video during the event where it was picked up by national outlets. The national branch of Theta Tau issued a statement today saying that a preliminary investigation found that the people in the video were not chapter members. Criticism of the university has not gone away, however, with a sit-in planned at the Shine Student Center tomorrow morning. So obviously this is an ongoing investigation. There are a lot of variables up in the air, but people are mad about the school's reaction because they did not react as swiftly with the release of the video, and they had to delay it and wait for a student newspaper to have to, give it out.
Well, there also seems to be some question as to whether or not those members in the video are actually members of Theta Tau. Obviously, that the national fraternity there is saying they aren't, but it raises a question of whether or not pledges are considered members. But Josh, like you said, yes, people are angry with the university. However, I will say I was impressed in the fact that Chancellor Severud sent the email out so early. I mean, it's very rare that that's the first sign of knowledge that we get on this campus. However, it's the response afterwards where people are upset. Like you said, the release of the video, but the university's defense there is that it's an ongoing investigation and they're not going to release these. And we also understand that there's several other videos that have not been released.
Right, there's a tremendous amount of overlap in terms of regulation when it comes to this. You have the school, you have the Greek organizations, you have the international fraternity, and then you have student organizations calling for specific measures as well. And some of those students just wanted their voices to be heard, like we saw out in the Chancellor's house protests, and we'll take a look at that now.
We make sure that we speak up and make our voices heard. As Taylor was saying, we are paying to be here. And even if you are here on a scholarship, your face is being used to make sure that more people come here and to spread this idea of this ideal Syracuse when it's not ideal for any of us.
And Josh, I think unfortunately, wherever you go in this world, you're going to find people that say things like that's in that video. And it's despicable and it's indefensible.
Absolutely.
But it's going to happen anywhere. And I was, the amount of people we saw come out yesterday to protest this, that were marching to the Chancellor's house, to Hendricks Chapel, I think that's the true sign of the student body on this campus and what they really stand for. And I think this is a pivotal moment for the university.
Absolutely.
Obviously, there's been backlash, but this is something that's going to take weeks, months, and their response is going to be very important. And we actually have video of what Chancellor Severud said. We'll take a look at that right now.
I guess I'd say that what has happened today should shake people up in this room because if this is who you think we are as a community, we should be really troubled.
Chancellor Syverud responding to the raw emotion that he saw. And as you said, it will take quite a bit of time to work through this as it is an ongoing investigation.
And DA Fitzpatrick said there's going to be no charges. Obviously, this is going to be handled by the university, but we should be expecting something. We'll have to leave the conversation there. Absolutely. And James Comey's book, A Higher Loyalty, hit the shelves on Tuesday, and it brought problems with it for the Trump administration. Here to tell us more about the feud between the president and the former CIA director and what it means for the Russia investigation is Talking Points analyst Dan Prager. Dan, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, as we understand, these Comey memos are going to be going to Congress. What do you make of that?
All right, they are going to Congress, and I don't know exactly what to make of it because we would need to see specifically what's in those memos. It's basically one of two things. One, they find some sort of damaging information like that Trump was trying to actually force a loyalty pledge out of Comey. If that's the case, obviously that bodes very poorly for Trump and his administration, kind of demanding loyalty from somebody who's supposed to be beholden to the public and not the president. The other option being that Comey, it's found that Comey had some information that's damaging on himself or Andrew McCabe, at which point that would be beneficial for the Trump administration. At this point, we really don't know.
And Dan, like you said, we don't know what's in the memo, so we can't speculate as to that. But there's also suggestions that they may go public. How significant do you think that is?
I think if they go public, then a broad scope of this investigation goes public, because James Comey, more than anybody with the exception of maybe Bob Mueller and Rod Rosenstein, knows more about anything than anyone else. Comey has been in the administration for a while. He had seen everything up before the election and just everything until the day he was fired. He met with the president. He knows everything about this. So there's a lot of information that might be in those memos that we might be able to see soon.
And the concerns when it comes to those memos is that it will impact the Russia investigation. Do you believe that it will have any effect on that investigation?
Well, again, it depends on specifically what's in there. I would think that right now, probably not. I would guess that what it's going to have an impact on is James Comey's credibility with the right. If they can find any sort of discrepancy with Comey's testimony and his and the memos, then the right will attack him as an unreliable source.
Speaking of testimony, Dan, very quickly, your thoughts on the fact that James Comey might testify against Andrew McCabe?
I think it's pretty nuts, honestly. You see James Comey saying that Andrew McCabe, we thought that this might be sort of a political hit against McCabe, that Trump was trying to deflect off of his own accusations and go on to McCabe. But if Comey can lend credence to that, it can show some actual problems within the organization.
Certainly actions we'll be keeping our eye on. Thank you for covering.
Thank you.
Coming up, Trump lawyer Michael Cohen hits back at FBI investigators, and changes may be coming to federal social programs. Those stories and more when we return.
Most party fouls are pretty dumb. But if you decide to drink and drive underage, you could lose your license and your freedom. Underage drinking and driving. The ultimate party foul.
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average four-legged homie, and then wham, bam, minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.
Everybody has a dream. Mine was to see the ocean. And with a little help, I made it.
President Trump's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, was in court this week following last week's raid on his office and hotel room. Cohen's legal team filed a motion to review the material seized in the raid. His team also requested that independent arbiters be appointed to review what evidence collected may fall under attorney-client privilege. Here to discuss the outcomes of the court hearing and what they mean are Talking Points analysts Michael Furnari and Brandon Ross. Both of you, thanks so much for joining us. Brandon, we'll start with you. Now, Judge Kimball Wood last week handed down two rulings. I think they may have been quite tough to follow for people. Can you just break them down for us?
Okay, so the first ruling was regarding basically first dibs on the evidence. Michael Cohen's legal team wanted access to the files first so they could get a review and give their own opinions on what falls under attorney-client privilege. Judge Wood said no to that ruling, and then they filed another motion to have an independent arbiter, specifically a special master, look over the materials, but the judge isn't committal yet, and they will decide that on the next court date on May 25th.
And what exactly does that mean, an independent arbiter,
so
in terms of this case?
There could be two different types of independent arbiters we see. What Cohen's team is requesting is called a special master. That is a special lawyer requested by the defendant, and each side, both Michael Cohen's team and the prosecutors, will select 3 or 4 names for the judge to pick from if the special master route is the route that they choose. If they don't go that route, the judge could also use what is called a filter team. It's a team of other prosecutors not related to this case, and they would go over the files and determine what, if any, would fall under attorney-client privilege, basically to determine what is allowed to be used by the prosecution.
And you touched on two of the biggest legal themes that the case is following, the fact that there is this independent arbiter that could come into play, and also the attorney-client privilege. So, Mike, when we talk about attorney-client privilege in this case, how does that directly link to President Donald Trump?
Yeah, so the link here is pretty clear. Now, of course, Donald Trump is Michael Cohen's most obvious, one of his few clients. So whatever comes out in this case is going to be revolving around President Trump most likely. Now, of course, President Trump is not directly involved in the case, as the charges Michael Cohen is facing are for mostly financial fraud and things of that nature and kind of mistakes with wire transfers and that type of thing. However, one of the key points of contention here is the Stormy Daniels payoff. Now, depending on how much information is made available to the public, I think it could be there could be some information coming out here that's very damaging to President Trump and
when
his
it comes to that attorney-client privilege, do you see that being a continuing discussion and the fact that that will be exploited by that legal team?
Absolutely. That's going to be really key, because if it's up to a judge what exactly comes out, that could be something that favors President Trump. It could be something that doesn't. And right now, it's really very difficult to say because we don't know what exactly, what files, what documents they're looking for right now.
And real quickly before we end here, what do you think the next step is?
I think the next step is obviously we wait until May 25th, and that's when the judge will finally rule on whether a special master or a filter team will see through this case, and we might see what the prosecutors use in court.
All right, Brandon Ross and Michael Furnari, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
And President Trump is revising federal social programs. He signed an executive order last week affecting recipients of programs such as Medicaid. Talking Points political analyst, Gilat Melamed, has the details of that policy.
The White House says it's aiming to tackle poverty in America. Last week, President Trump signed an executive order calling for work requirements for federal assistance programs. These programs include SNAP, often referred to as food stamps, and TAMP, which provides financial aid to low-income homes. The goal of this order is in its name, reducing poverty in America by promoting opportunity and economic mobility. The president says this work requirement will do exactly that by getting more people off government programs and into the workplace. Aside from a full-time job, things that will qualify as work include job training, searching for a job, and going to school. Similar steps have already been taken on the state level. A few months ago, the Trump administration allowed Kentucky, Indiana, and Arkansas to have work requirements for Medicaid. Right now, it's hard to say how many people this executive order will actually impact. A 2017 University of Michigan study found that 75% of people enrolled in Medicaid were already working or physically unable to.
Now, Gilat, thank you for joining us here at Desk. Now that the order's been issued, what is the next step for the federal government to actually implement this policy?
Right, so the different agencies like HUD, Health and Human Services, they have 90 days to review, the work requirements that they do or don't have for their programs right now. Then they have to submit that to the OMB, say this is what we're going to do to comply with that executive order. And then there's another 90 days to actually implement that. So we're going to expect to see this stuff implemented by mid-July based off that timeline.
Is there any reason as to why, though, it was an executive order and not sent through Congress as a reform bill?
Right, and it's interesting because Paul Ryan, reforming entitlement programs, that was one of the biggest things he wanted. Tax reform was the other one, which he got. But really, it would need 60 votes in the Senate to pass. It definitely would not get that. So it's really a way for the Trump White House to put forward something they've been very outspoken about, which is, reforming welfare, trying to get people off of these government programs, downsizing that, and moving them, through help through the private sector. He even spoke about community and religious-based organization help to, get people back into jobs, not the government.
And both sides of the aisle, Gilat, what's the response been like? Break it down for us.
Yeah, I mean, Republicans are definitely happy, not just, with the policy itself, but also when you think about it, it's a way of, downsizing the government. It is interesting, though, that this, it is kind of under the radar. They signed this order in private. Democrats, on the other hand, they're not happy with the way the term welfare is used in it. He's taking a broad sweeping definition of welfare, they're saying. That's what the Democratic majority whip said. And they're saying it's kind of a racial target and it's putting welfare in a bad light.
And in terms of those next steps, in terms of implementing it, what can we expect following?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, it is already in 3 states on the state level. But like that University of Michigan study said, they say 75% of people on Medicaid, that's just for Medicaid, are already working. So it might not have physically that big of an impact on the amount of people it's going to affect, more of that political statement of this is what the Trump White House, wants to get out of these federal assistance programs.
Certainly something very interesting that we're going to keep following here. I think in terms of President Trump, certainly something that's been in the works a while now. Interesting to see how they'll be able to get this done. Gilat, thanks so much for joining us. The White House moves forward on North Korean relations, and Cuba has a new president. Find out more when we return.
Leaving hot coals improperly extinguished can cause a wildfire.
Hey guys, it's Smokey!
It looks as if Smokey is going to use the drown, stir, drown and feel technique. After the first drown, a good start. Next, another drink. And finally, a close feel.
Is it cool? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Smokey, catch! Oh, my bad, Smokey.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Did you hear about the pony with a sore throat? He was a little horse. Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding. Why couldn't the Wait, why was the basketball court all wet? Why? Because the players kept dribbling all over it. Where do cats go on vacation? New York.
They'll test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. And move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
Mike Pompeo, the CIA Director and Secretary of State nominee, traveled to North Korea in an effort to lay the groundwork for a meeting between Kim Jong-un and President Trump. President Trump confirmed that these talks were happening, and he also alluded to the possibility of officially ending the Korean War. Talking Points Analyst Thomas St. Hilaire is here with the recent diplomatic developments in the Korean Peninsula. Thomas, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
So let's break down what are the key moments from Pompeo's visit.
Right, I mean, the key moment is that this is something that really has never happened before. I mean, we're talking about a sitting United States president meeting with the leader of North Korea. Now, this meeting could be expected to be had sometime in June, and analysts are still speculating where it could be. It could be in the neutral zone between North and South Korea. It could also be in a neutral European country. But the real topic behind this is denuclearization a possibility? And Kim Jong-un has said that this is a topic that could be put on the table for the summit meeting. Again, a really big development in public diplomacy.
Well, since you raised the question, let me ask you.
Sure.
I mean, I know it's tough to say, but is peace and diplomacy attainable?
Again, that's a bit of a, I'm going to take a cop out here, that's a bit of a toss-up because, on one hand, we have seen a lot of these, kinds of talks really not come to much. I mean, in 2012, President Obama, under his strategic patience policy, there was a deal on the table where we would supply food aid, and in return they would denuclearize a lot of their programs. What happened next? I mean, they launched a rocket into outer space and launched a satellite. So that, of course, crumbled a lot of the talks. We talked a couple of weeks ago back with the Olympics. North and South marching under one flag. Again, that's something that's happened before. Didn't really result in much. On the other hand, this is something that never happened. There's a proposed treaty, perhaps, to officially end the war that ended really only in a truce. If a treaty were to happen, that would, of course, require the United States and China to also sign on that. So, again, until it happens, we can't really say definitively, but it is a positive development.
Well, until it happens, we can't say definitively, but when we talk about why this summit is such a big deal, what's sort of the historical precedent for this?
I mean, I really want to go back to the fact that this has really never happened before. I mean, we've seen non-sitting U.S. presidents meet in North Korea. In 1994, Jimmy Carter went against maybe some of the wishes of Bill Clinton at the time, but we saw that meeting made a lot of progress. I mean, North Korea agreed to temporarily denuclearize, again, a lot of their programs. So the historical precedent for this happening really is non-existent for a sitting U.S. president, but again, what that could mean, perhaps we can look at the Jimmy Carter example to see what can happen from that.
And Thomas, what kind of impact do you think this is going to have elsewhere around the globe?
I mean, we know that any time that we have a potential discussion about a country scaling back its nuclear programs, that it's going to have an international impact. But the one country that I'm really keeping an eye on is Japan, because Japan right now is also meeting with North Korea, engaging in talks. And Japan's also going to be visiting the United States very soon. And there are a lot of people speculating that Japan really wants to keep this tough stance on North Korea. So again, that's a development to really keep an eye on with how the United States talking with North Korea will, whether or not it will collide or whether or not it will be very similar to the way that the country is engaged.
A lot of global powers at play, and something we'll definitely be keeping our eye on. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you very much.
This is the first in 6 decades that the president of Cuba is not a Castro. Raul Castro is preparing to resign as the former vice president, Miguel Diaz-Canel Bermudez, takes his place. Here to discuss what Cuban government changes will look like is Talking Points analyst Payton May. Payton, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So when we look at how this presidency, future presidency, will change Cuba, what are you expecting?
There to be much change, especially because Diaz-Canel was vice president under Castro, so he's really shadowed the position, basically. And he's always been close with the Castro family, looked up to Fidel as like a father figure almost, but he was born after the revolution, so obviously he knows how they led. He's probably going to follow suit in a lot of their policies. Along with that, Raul Castro is going to take the top position in the Communist Party of Cuba, which is the only party that they have in Cuba, so he's not leaving his power like unnoticed, I guess. So he's still going to have influence.
And in terms of the current state of the Cuban economy, what sort of complications or challenges do you think that creates for the new president?
Yeah, of course. So there's a lot of problems in Cuba right now economically. The dual currency system is causing them a lot of problems. They're trying to move to a single currency system. Along with that, the oil supplies from Venezuela is dwindling very slowly, but that's going to happen in the future. And then obviously after Hurricane Irma, there's so much reconstruction going on, and tensions with the U.S. is obviously going to be a problem with them later on. Trump has actually expelled 17 diplomats, Cuban diplomats from Washington, and he has tighter, more stringent policies of the embargo.
And all of those factors are compounded by the fact that Cuba has never gone through an administrative transition. So how do you think this entire situation will play out as they transition?
Well, I think this is more of a generational transition for Cuba. Obviously, since he was born after the 1959 Fidel's revolution, he grew up with the after revolution. So a lot of the young people of Cuba, they do have an aging population in Cuba, but a lot of the young population sees this opportunity of a new president as better opportunities for them. So we'll see what will happen in the future, but I think this is going to be a huge distinction between state and political parties. We'll see what happens with that.
Certainly a fundamental shift for a nation that the world will be watching. Yes. Payton, thank you for covering.
Thank you.
After the break, we'll return to Syracuse to review the fate of the city's Parks and Recreation Commissioner. Don't go away.
Patriotism. It inspires passionate debate, and it's worn like a badge of honor with good reason, because it means love and devotion for one's country. But what really makes up this country of ours? It's the people. To love America, is to love all Americans. This year, patriotism shouldn't just be about pride of country. It should be about love. Love beyond age, sexuality, disability, race, religion, and other labels. Because love has no labels.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for information on how to provide even better care for the person who wants to care of you.
Suspended Syracuse Parks Commissioner Lazarus Sims is facing a felony charge of third-degree larceny. Sims was charged in court on Tuesday morning. The district attorney is accusing Sims of stealing more than $5,000 from the city of Syracuse. The former Syracuse University basketball star was placed on leave in late March after an audit revealed serious financial discrepancies in the Parks Department. Talking Points Analyst Conor Wight is here to discuss. Now, Conor, just please quickly walk us through what sort of discrepancies we're seeing here in the Parks Department.
So this all started when Syracuse Common Councilor Suzanne Boyle requested an audit from Marty Masterpole. What essentially happened was she had received an email from a constituent that was concerned when they were asked to pay in cash for a park rental. Now, Masterpole looked into that. That turned out to be nothing. They ended up paying a check for that rental. However, that did raise a few red flags with him, so he looked into it further. He found that a lacrosse league had been paying in cash and that the amount that they had been paying didn't match up with the deposit slips that had been set into the general fund. So Masterpole went to Walsh and they both agreed that this should be taken up with the DA's office.
And where did the money go?
Well, what the DA is saying is the money was taken between October 16th and October 31st of 2017. And what he's saying is that Sims essentially pocketed this cash from park rentals and other city fees.
And what was the response from Mayor Walsh?
He expressed regret. He said he was saddened for Sims, for the city of Syracuse, but he did have some positive things to say about Sims. He made sure of that. He said that Sims has done some great things for this city, particularly talking about doing a lot of good things for the young people. That could raise some questions as to whether or not he's defending Sims or himself for the fact that he did rehire Sims, even though concerns were raised to him.
And what's been the status of the Parks Department while Lazarus Sims is placed on leave?
Well, since he's been on leave, the deputy has taken over, and the deputy mayor has been overseeing the general operations there.
All right.
Certainly a topic that we will be following here, and the city will be taking a look at as well. Thank you, Conor.
Thank you.
That's all we have for Talking Points tonight. I'm Josh Carney.
And I'm Mike Riccardi. If you want to check out more clips or articles or webisodes, make sure you check out CitrusTV.com. Follow all our social media on Citrus at CitrusTV News on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook.
And be sure to tune in next week for a brand new edition of Talking Points. Have a good night, Syracuse.